the appropriate resources to investigate and to respond. I've updated leaders of Congress in both parties, and we reaffirm that on days like this there are no Republicans or Democrats. We are Americans, united in concern for our fellow citizens. I've also spoken with Governor Patrick and Mayor Menino and made it clear that they have every single federal resource necessary to care for the victims and counsel the families. And above all, I made clear to them that all Americans stand with the people of Boston. Boston police, firefighters, and first responders, as well as the National Guard, responded heroically and continue to do so as we speak. It's a reminder that so many Americans serve and sacrifice on our behalf every single day, without regard to their own safety, in dangerous and difficult circumstances. And we salute all those who assisted in responding so quickly and professionally to this tragedy. We still do not know who did this or why, and people shouldn't jump to conclusions before we have all the facts. But make no mistake, we will get to the bottom of this, and we will find out who did this. We'll find out why they did this. Any responsible individuals, any responsible groups will feel the full weight of justice. Today is a holiday in Massachusetts, Patriots' Day. It's a day that celebrates the free and fiercely independent spirit that this great American city of Boston has reflected from the earliest days of our nation. And it's a day that draws the world to Boston's streets in a spirit of friendly competition. Boston is a tough and resilient town, so are its people. I'm supremely confident that Bostonians will pull together, take care of each other, and move forward as one proud city, and as they do, the American people will be with them every single step of the way. You should anticipate that as we get more information, our teams will provide you briefings. We're still in the investigation stage at this point, but I just want to reiterate, we will find out who did this, and we will hold them accountable. Thank you very much.
President of the United States saying they do not know who's responsible here, but make no mistake, we will get to the bottom of this. Essentially, Mr. Chairman, Chairman of the House Homeland Security Committee, back with us, saying the United States is resilient, and we'll find out who's behind this.
I think that's right, and I received a call from the White House about 30 minutes ago. We discussed this. Talked about the role of the federal law enforcement up in Boston, state and local. They're all working together. And I think, I made the same comment to the White House that the President just made, and that is today we are not Democrats, Republicans, we're all Americans. We're all Americans united against terrorism. And I think that's a very, very important point. And I think also, as he stated, not to jump to conclusions, because while I do believe this is an act of terrorism, we don't know who's behind it at this point in time, and we don't have all the evidence before us.
Sure. Someone who used to work for President Obama, a Justice Department spokesman, Matthew Miller, who worked for Attorney General Holder, tweeted today after all of this and after a number of minutes and hours had gone by, quote, "Small bombs in multiple locations sounds like the planned NYC subway bombing the FBI thwarted in 2009. Again, he was a spokesman for the DOJ under Attorney General Holder. Again, we're not jumping to conclusions, but it does sound like that kind of a plot.
It is very reminiscent of the Times Square bombing. And, the fact it's Patriots' Day, I think has maybe some significance. As you and I were talking about earlier, there are reports, early reports, that there are ball bearings used in these explosive devices, which is very consistent with IEDs. This is a preferred method and route of choice for the terrorist to kill Americans. And so, again, it's very early stages in the investigation, but if indeed there turned out to be ball bearings, I would consider that a very significant factor in terms of this being a sort of IED device that's very similar to what the terrorists use overseas in the Middle East.
Who briefed Congress?
I just got a specific call from the White House liaison to me about 30 minutes ago.
And was there shrapnel in both bombs?
They did not indicate that, but I have had some early reporting that there were. shrapnel, ball bearings involved in these bombings. So again, that's very significant when you look at the signature threat out here. The signature threat of an IED is ball bearings. So if that indeed was the case here, and we know 2 bombs went off, one was potentially self-detonated by the Coast Guard at the John F. Kennedy Library. If ball bearings were used, I think that's illustrative in terms of tracing back to the perpetrator and the motivation.
What about people? We've heard heightened security here in Washington and New York, you know, an abundance of caution. You're Homeland Security Chairman. You know, after something like this, obviously the nation is on alert.
We are. I don't want to, you know, I think it's important to remain calm and not panic. But D.C. and New York are on a little more heightened state of alert right now, as we should be, as is the White House and so is the Capitol. Remember 9/11, the 2 targets that were unfinished were the White House and the Capitol. So we're always very mindful of that, as is the fact that New York City is always one of the #1 targets. The fact that Boston was hit here just opens it up to a whole new city. And it's very, very tragic. But again, to pick a time when multiple people were going across the finish line to simultaneously detonate, as we've seen in these horrific pictures that we have, these graphic photos and videos of people literally being blown up, limbs being blown off. It is a real tragic day. And one thing is for certain, we will find the people who did this, and we will bring them to justice.
You know, it does run the spectrum, though. I mean, as much as it may have similarities to the New York City subway plot, you know, you also have images of the 1996 Olympic Park bombing and what that person, Eric Robert Rudolph, had in his mind. So you can run the gamut on possible suspects behind this, right?
Sure, and this is so close to the event that, you know, when I talk to law enforcement, FBI, those on the ground, you really can't jump to conclusions right now because you don't know what the final answer is here. But we do know that 2 bombs were detonated that caused mass injuries and 2 deaths so far reported. And the fact that the one at the JFK Library is of great concern. We don't have evidence that there are any more out there, but we really don't know at this point in time. It's just too early, right?
Last thing, you know, everyone's praising the local authorities on the ground. They apparently did find a couple of unexploded devices. They stopped the cellular use right away because cell phones could detonate some of these IEDs, for a better word, these bombs in many cases. They did a fantastic job, didn't they?
They did. And remember, just like on 9/11, going to the fire station across from Ground Zero, these first responders need to be commended. Look, it happened very quickly, but the response that they gave after the fact could have potentially saved more lives in terms of, as you mentioned, cell phones can detonate IEDs. If these were in fact IEDs, they could have stopped you know, further violence and killings. And I think they have done an extraordinary job.
Where do we go from here?
Well, there is a full investigation. Homeland Security folks on the ground, FBI, BATF, Coast Guard is in the waterways right now. We've talked to them. State and local officials, the local Boston PD is doing a phenomenal job, as are the firefighters. There are some indicators out there, although I can't confirm there may be a person of interest. And I think this will evolve rather quickly.
I mean, we heard the police commissioner talk about, you know, the guarding rooms, and there's a heavy police presence. I mean, we have from multiple sources that, in fact, there is a person who's being guarded in the hospital. Very good sourcing from our guy over at Department of Justice. I mean, can you shed any more light on that?
Well, I'm hearing those same reports, but unconfirmed. And so it would be irresponsible for me to confirm something I don't know to be fact. But if that is true, that's very good news that we're already on to a person of interest that can lead us to what could have been a wider conspiracy plot to kill Americans on this tragic day, Patriots Day.
Okay.